Welcome to the MCSA's first Spring 2026 webinar. My name is KC. I'm the president this year. So glad you guys are able to come and join us as we listen to a couple of excellent speakers speak about burnout and how that may affect us working in cannabis uniquely or maybe not so uniquely. It just depends our experiences. And it's kind of a discussion-based topic, but we do have speakers who will be leading the discussion, and we'll be learning from them and hearing about their takes on everything, which is exciting. So um, I'll go ahead and introduce our speakers real quick. We have Annette Fernandez. And Annette, you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about you, just very briefly, about your background and what you do in cannabis?
Sure, thank you. And thanks for putting this together and having me.
Of course.
Appreciate you asking. My name's Annette Fernandez. I live in Washington Heights, New York City. I'm a single mom, and I was actually born and raised here in Washington Heights, which is also the number one community disproportionately impacted by prohibition. I'm 51 years old, so I actually have very vivid um, memories and experiences of living through that. So I think that's kind of like my origin story. And then I'm the founder of High Exposure Agency. Oh, what's up, Charmaine? And that's a small boutique business development agency that I started when I dropped out of corporate in 2021. I worked in finance and specialty retail for 25 years. And so I know a lot about burnout, unfortunately. But I'm happy to be here and feeling particularly burnt out. So I think it's timely conversation.
Perfect place. Glad you're here.
Thanks.
Thank you. And we also have our other speaker, Emma Castillo, who is a current spring graduate coming up. So, Emma, you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about you and your background too?
Yeah, hi everyone. So thank you, Casey, for that intro. My name is Emma Castillo, and I currently am a manager at a dispensary in San Francisco, California. But I also have experience with manufacturing and brand activation. Um, and I think coming from the largest legal cannabis market, I think in the world, actually, um, you know, there's a lot that that comes up when it comes to sustainability in our industry, and just being a positive agent in the space. So I'm excited to talk about all those things and how it is that we persevere through the challenges that are unique to us.
Yes, totally agree. Thank you, Emma. Thank you for coming. Yeah, thank you both for coming. I'm excited to hear from you guys. I don't have any set questions just because I do want this to be discussion based and put the ball in you guys' court to take the direction that you'd like to go. Because I don't think, a lot of us do have experience working in cannabis to a degree, but upon earning our degree, we might get to some other positions, new jobs, new experiences, and learning about burnout and how to deal with that. We might not know exactly what to ask. So Annette, do you want to start, or Emma, either one of you guys, feel free to take the floor and tell us just maybe a little bit about how you initially felt and got into cannabis, and then maybe how you kind of started noticing, hey, I'm feeling burnt out, maybe some things that led to that, maybe some things about how you decided to approach that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start because I feel like it's timely for me in that I've had a lot of different roles, and the reason I got into this was because I wanted to drop out of corporate America, and I had a very kind of rainbows and butterfly view of how I could start a business in cannabis because I had so much specialty retail experience. I'm a consumer since I was 18, and then I think as I learned more and more about entrepreneurship, for me it was like it seems wrong to be an entrepreneur who's not an activist, so and then eventually dots really started to connect with me because I think for me, I've always been much more keen about equity in terms of rights, and I'm kind of an equalizer by nature. I hate injustice, and so I think those things kind of started like the dots started connecting, and I was like, you know what, I'm like gonna jump feet first into this and really study the curriculum of how we got here and who's been working on this. So like I literally stopped working and became like entrenched in activism. I started in 2018 to kind of dip my toe in the water. I went to a Woman Grow meeting and I met all these amazing people. I was like, oh my God, there's like this whole thing that's happening. And I didn't even know. And this is again pre legalization, during prohibition still. Met a bunch of activists there in 2018. I was still in finance, so it was interesting because I was a licensed person in finance, and I was doing this kind of like subversive work in cannabis, still subversive, right? Because like we're tested and all these things, and then I drop out of corporate America mostly because I'm burnt out and depressed, and this is in 2021. George Floyd has happened. I'm working in finance in prime brokerage, which I don't know if anyone's familiar with finance or capital markets. It is a really patriarchal, white supremacist environment. And so I was literally dying. And really, for the first time in my adult life and my working career, was like, I just can't do this anymore. I can't participate in the system anymore. And I had a therapist who helped me like basically break out of it. So I went on a medical leave, and for 8 months I kind of stuck it to my employer and eventually sued them as well. So I'm proud of the fact that I was able to like use the system to relieve myself and get some money from these folks because the environment was toxic and ultimately inequitable. And so I think, um, for me, I feel like cannabis right now, particularly in New York, because that's what I can speak to. It's not like I've visited other states, California and Colorado. I have not been to, and I haven't seen what their markets look like. So I'm being fully transparent that my experience is really East Coast, New York. I've seen some stores in Jersey, and obviously have followed what programs are doing, and in terms of equity, what's hit the national news and things like that. But ultimately, what I've learned in New York and really why I think I'm still in this brutal, I don't know what to call it, like scenario of activism here in New York is because everything is connected politically and cannabis, and I think that's part of the reason why I feel so burnt out this year and this past like 3 or 4 months, because I was working for a major cannabis brand here in New York, number one brand in New York. And what I witnessed out in the field was really disappointing from an activist point of view. And so, again, it just connects the dots back to this corporate mindset, like where people are putting profits over the plant and over the people. And so, I think that's kind of why I wanted to talk about this today, because for me, it is so much larger than cannabis. It really is about equity, and equity in all senses: healthcare, racial equity, financial equity. I mean, equity is just at the heart of all of the issues that I feel like we're having right now in the States in general. And I think for New York, we're, I think we have the ability to really crack the code here in terms of anti-monopoly, anti corporatization, and because like the culture is the culture here, and that's part of our history, and it's something that cannot be corporatized or monetized by anyone else but us. And when I say us, I mean like the us, the for us by us people. I'll take a breath there.
Thank you. I love what you said. Yeah.
Um, yeah, if I could like piggyback. I think I understand and so much resonates what you said, Annette, with regards to keeping equity in mind, especially given the models that we've seen, like for example in California with the MSOs, which are the multi-state um, operating companies. These cannabis companies have grown so much, and what used to be a legacy based kind of market is now becoming like highly monopolized. And so with that comes a slew of things, such as putting profit over people. And I think that my biggest reason for getting into cannabis was pretty much the overlap with the public health implications. We're talking about economics, we're talking about mental health, we're talking about health sciences, education, really meeting people where they're at. And so to not lose sight of that as much as possible and to align in spaces where that mission and those values can translate into like supporting people in their lives through cannabis is a really big like driving factor for me, because we know like how this literally changes lives. I think especially with that whole MSO thing, like we get a little bit discouraged, or we feel like very small. We feel like um, the underdog, and in the sense that it feels like we're like kind of keeping people interested, not just for the money. Like when I talk to companies, when I talk to brands, there's certain people that we bring on into the store, for example, and they have no interest in doing like demos or patient education or even bud tender education. And so there's just this idea that like, okay, well, if they get into the market, they're just going to make money, where that's not really what it's about. I think a lot of us can appreciate, the education that comes with that, and our due diligence to give people that education and make sure that it's, you know, uh, based in facts, and not just like, oh, smoke this, eat this, and I'm not really going to tell you why. But that starts like from the top down, and that kind of culture and that vibe really does kind of trickle down. And so people, I think, especially in California, I think that we have put, especially medical patients. I think that a lot of us can agree that even recreational patients, that they're patients still, right? So pretty much everybody should have the opportunity to find that information, to get educated. But it got put in the back burner for us in California in 2016 when it went recreational. It was just assumed that the recreational market was going to take care of medical patients. And so that's where and then we had, a lot of tobacco companies get into the game over here. And while I will say, like, credit where credit's due, there have been improvements on things like hardware and like vaping devices to make things safer and more consistent. However, that like integral part of meeting people where they're at, especially in the dispensary space, which I have now 8 years. It's going to be 8 years in April that I've been working in dispensaries. It just seems to have gotten just watered down, and like we're losing that focus. And so that's where the issue of equity arises. You're not meeting people's needs as far as education. You're potentially driven by the profit of the situation. Like I know my owner, like he's really like, okay, like we got these high ticket items, make sure you push that. And it's like, okay, well, how can we balance it? And this goes into the sustainability issue of being a business, right? Like at the end of the day, yes, we would like to make some money. We all need to, to make some kind of margin, or if we're investing as entrepreneurs, if we're investing all of this time and money into something, we want to see, fruits of our labor. However, there is a way to balance that. And I feel like California has not given that enough priority since recreational. So
I mean, they're not the only ones. And I think that's,
yeah, right. It's like
I think like that's the other piece of it. And what's so insidious to me is that corporate is corporate is corporate is corporate. Like the, I think there's a piece that I read today about Virginia's program, because I'm part of this like group with Parabola. I know Roman, we met there, and the obviously William. But I think the other piece of it is that their intention was never to provide medical, which is the worst part. Like in New York, they were situated and they're doing the same thing in Virginia, and they've done the same thing in every state, basically, where they position themselves to basically switch and turn lights on for recreational. And they're vertical operators. So that just gives undue advantage. And it goes back to just the co-opting of this plant, and the co-opting of the business. And in New York it's particularly infuriating because we have it written into our law that 50% of the market is supposed to be operated by folks that were directly negatively impacted by the war on drugs, or CDIs, or social equity folks. Like, it is written into our law. So these folks are violating, like, they don't even respect the law, because for them the only law is the shareholders and their return on investment. And so ultimately it's just, I think that contributes to burnout, right? And how you feel about continuing to operate and work in the market and exist in the market, and really question, the work. Because ultimately it is a David and Goliath situation. When, for me, I mean, when we think about it at the macro level, this is happening across the board in every industry. And one of the things that I wrote about cannabis this year, I said, how could we expect this not to be happening? Like, that this is just like modus operandi in the United States.
Right.
So
Right. It's pretty disappointing as well. Like, I mean, obviously, like, I'm in California, so I can mostly speak to that. But it especially is disappointing to see, like, legacy growers, for example, that are no longer able to, like, they had amazing, like, strains, and they had a really great system for growing really good flower, and then they just couldn't survive anymore. And it's kind of sad, honestly. And that also feeds into then, like, the genetic pool, and just at the most basic level, like, strains that were, from medicinal days in the 90s here in California, Blue Dream, Bubba Kush, a ton of these, like a train wreck, just really, really good quality strains. They're just like, they're gone. And that over the course of the years, at least in my experience over the last 8 years, has become more and more apparent. And when you feel like you're working for somebody, because I've always worked for, somebody, essentially. Like, I've always worked in dispensaries as a bud tender, supervisor, and now manager. It can be kind of disheartening sometimes, because especially with the intention that you have of, like, improving people's lives and providing good quality service and providing good health education, when the people that essentially, dictate what it is that you're focused on in your workspace, and they're not interested in supporting people and supporting, that kind of mission, you get burnt out, in the sense of, like, you don't feel supported, and you don't feel like things align, and so you're just kind of working for the man, and and entrepreneurial opportunities have their own barriers to access, of course.
100%.
And though, as we know, like, there are equity programs, even the equity programs themselves get heavy backlash because they're not actually doing a really good job. And we do see this across the board as well. So yeah, that's contributes to burnout, I guess. Yeah.
And on I am not one to be like all doom and gloom, and I'm trying not to be that way these days, although it's really hard. But I think the other part of this that I think about is that like with this contrast can come like greater expansion, and I just want to like explain that a little bit further. I feel like we need to see the worst of it, like we're seeing, so that we can create the alternative models. And I feel like New York is definitely like a prime place for that. And this first round of folks, like, the past I would say 2 years, it's like these stores are maturing. The market just had $2 billion in retail sales. We have more micro growers coming onto the market, more folks that are focusing on building brands. And while we have a slew of issues, for me, the what I know of New York is that we are innovators and we are always going to find the solutions. And we have some really amazing subject matter experts in the state. What we're missing, and I think many of us will be focused on this year, is the funding. Um, and I think with the proper funding, we could really have some amazing glimmers. And I'll give you a perfect example of that. We have Vickiana Reyes, who ran a program at Medgar Evers College. They just won in 2025 a $7 million RFP to build like 125,000 square foot facility in Brooklyn that is going to be a cooperative processing, branding, cultivating facility. So that's when we talk about innovation, I think New York, there's lots of folks like me, like Vickiana, like the Damian Fagans of the world, Charmaine. I know you're an activist here, and that are really, we're not going to go away. And while we maybe get burnt out, and a lot of us, like myself, financially unstable right now because we've spent so many years in the market just giving and giving and spending. Um, we're going to come back for our money because when we've provided the expertise basically for free to the market, and so we have to get reparations for that. At the end of the day, we supported the building out of what we have right now, and while it's not perfect, we actually lead the nation in equity numbers. Like if you look at ownership in New York, it is more diverse than in the rest of the country, and so we do have some results to back up a very imperfect program, but it's just like how we just put Mamdani in for mayor. It's gonna take that kind of work, coordination, cooperation, and I think that's and this is where we have a lot of opportunity in New York, is in coalition building and actually working together, not being like factioned out like the gangs of New York, which we are.
Right.
And I'm sure that happened in California too, from what I've heard.
Yeah, no, and it can feel sometimes, even though it's a small world, when you really get down to it and you're seeing the same people, it can still feel like super big. And I think to your point of like getting it right, y'all over there on the East Coast have somewhat of that leg up where you can take best practices and like leave out the ones that been the best, and vice versa. Like now that we see what it can be, I think that a lot of us on the West Coast can learn from y'all and incorporate and improve what we have going on, and that's where the activism piece really steps in, because somebody's got to be like, we can't just be complacent just for the oldest market over here. And just because, we love to boast that we were like some of the first to do it, great. And we have work to do to improve that, and then strive for, equity, strive for sustainability for all individuals, especially legacy micro businesses, small family businesses. I work for a family business, and one thing that I have been able to do more successfully than in other dispensaries that I used to work at is have my boss's ear and really say like, look, like we have a chance to do this. Like we don't have a ton of investors, and things. So like where possible, you find those allies that can share that vision so that you can actually make tangible change and take action on it so that you can bridge that gap a little bit better. And that's kind of like the silver lining, right? It's or like the light at the end. Like there's always something and someone to ally up with in order for that change to happen.
Yeah, 100% about like I was talking to because I'm constantly writing about this, talking about it, like canoodling over it. um we've got to build the models, like for me that's what we should be focused on, or like at least how I want to approach my work is like am I gonna continue to resist this thing, or am I gonna just say, okay, I'm gonna be more productive and build what I want to see. And like with the agency that I founded here in New York City and with my partner Castillo, that's kind of what we focus on. Is like, well, what do we want to see in the market, and let's build it. Like, let's just do it, because like, we've got to take up the space. And I actually think like that is a huge opportunity now in this chaos. I mean, we are living in the most chaotic administration government. So that to me is all opportunity. Okay, you want to go like all out renegade. Okay, so now we is our time to be innovative about what's possible while folks are, losing their minds.
Right.
um
Yeah.
I find that to be like there could be a lot of opportunity for us. And I think the other thing is, if there's anything that the plant has taught us, is that so much can be done in community face to face.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like it's I love doing conversations and having conversations like this. And as a matter of fact, my business model for this year is going to be about having more face to face activities and smaller groups, and creating and making things, because I feel like that in itself is revolutionary to bring people together. And then folks kind of do work locally, which I think is really high impact.
And it
Yeah.
collectively helps with reducing community burnout because everyone's got
Mm-hmm.
each other's backs.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely like a wheel you got to get started though.
Yeah. No, that face to face or that the groundwork really is integral, because then when everyone does that at their own place in the ecosystem, because we're talking about not just customer facing, because at the end of the day that is what drives the whole market, but we're talking about manufacturing, distribution, policy level changes, and just having a strong network of individuals with that same vision. And then if there's something that we know about our industry is that it is constantly changing, and we should use that as a tool, as something that isn't yet too concrete, so that we can mold it in the way that we want to, so that we can see what we want to see, on all the levels. And I think especially when it comes to business sustainability and supporting people's businesses, that is paramount. So that's, yeah, totally. Think we should keep that, energy going, and really look for those allies. My mentor and friend, Chef Layla, she's been working in the cannabis industry for 15 years as a professional chef. She helped me with brand activation. I took her culinary cannabis program. She frequently, apart from actually creating the cannabis culinary program, we would have industry brunches where we would invite COOs, different growers, a bunch of people in different places of the ecosystem to just come and sit and eat and talk, and see how we can support each other. So, seeing people face to face and like not being afraid to reach out to people is something that I have been personally learning as we move through this program, because as individuals in this program, I think it was said in the last symposium, we are like basically spokespeople. We are advocates just by being here, because we are choosing to really elevate this and to refocus that our individual purpose in each of our places where we are and what we care about. Literally something like literally what we're doing right now is part, part of that work. So
yeah, and that alignment too, like the only, I feel like for me, part of this burnout that happens too is because it's a really volatile marketplace, because it's emerging, because it's cannabis, because there's like trauma, because I could just keep going on and on about like for me, that's why it's important to be face to face with folks, to find that real alignment and to develop the trust and rapport that's needed to work on things that are this important, and this delicate, and with respect for everybody. I mean, I think that that's one of the reasons I continue to be compelled to do this work, is because I want to translate the experience that I've had in my work life for the last 2.5 decades into more progressive models for working together. And I think like that's where in New York there's so much opportunity, because I feel like if small businesses, small business owners, the independents, let's say, independent of multi-state operators, if they were working together as if they were one ecosystem, that could be very powerful and a counterattack to what's happening in the market, because when you have folks like Fluent who have 140,000 square foot grows and they're vertically integrated, they can control a lot of what happens in terms of pricing and placement in the market. And so I think that, I'll continue to sing that song in this industry as long as I continue to be a part of it, because I think that to me is where we could see a lot of success and innovation and biodiversity in the market. That's the thing. Like, it's such a diverse market. We're not even scratching the surface right now. I was sharing with a friend today. I was like, I don't see what's for me yet.
right.
When I think about like what are my top 5 stores that I visited in the state, it's really hard for me to dig in there and say, well, these are the stores that I would get behind and say they're representative of what I would want as a consumer. So we've got to be honest too about what our opportunities are, and then I'm praying that collectively we can get these guys to become, and I'm talking about men because it's mostly men that run the market, to really release their egos and be open to feedback, or else they're going to fail.
My God, I was literally, so part of the whole taking best practices from East Coast states that are proactively putting policies into place that we do not have, for example, listing terpenes on products. It's just not a requirement. It's not needed. Or it's not required. It's not enforced. It's required on the COA, of course, and like all the lab testing, everything. But you don't get that on the packaging. It's not a thing. And there are people that actually, in a way, benefit from that lack of maturity and proactiveness. In the sense that it's like less work for them. It simplifies their packaging. It simplifies, the labor that is done in order to put product out. And I literally was talking to, because we have house product in our dispensary, right? And I was talking to the representative that was coming to check on our stuff, and because we were going to put a new order in. And because I casually, I sometimes mention it. I have more in-depth conversations with certain people that you can tell are interested about the fact that there's a master's in, cannabinoid science and medical cannabis therapeutics. But he's like, so are you still doing that cannabis thing? And I was like, yes, I'm still doing that program. And he's like, well, like, what do you hope to see? Like, what? And so I gave that example of the terpenes to him. And he's like, well, I don't know. I just feel like you're just throwing too much information at the consumer at that point. And I was like,
Talk about patriarchal.
and it is, I have gotten, before I even applied to this, when I found out about the program, and I was, there's this very, all my respects, I worked with him for many years, Jimmy Devine. He's one of the leading journalists here in California. In general, he wrote for Leafly. He's written for Leaf magazine, stuff like that. But when I told him about this program, he literally laughed at me. They like he literally was like what are you gonna do? Like, how is that, like, that, that's not, you're not gonna be playing, the game, the way that you want to. You're just gonna be working uphill. And it's pretty much to this idea of like, and it was he was trying to like make light of the fact that like, oh, that's just for like, academics. Like, that's just, it's almost like he was like, that's not the real ground cannabis stuff. And I was like, that was in a way almost even more of a push for me to like, so like these examples of listening to, people's males ego, in these spaces is almost of more of like a, well, you're gonna see, like, we're that even makes it more important to do what it is that we're doing. And kind of, like, there are some individuals that have a large influence that actually do care about these things. So it is possible, and like, we need to find those people and make sure that we're in league with them, and make sure that we have our seat at the table. I heard something about, and this is burnout particularly for people of color, particularly women. Our cannabis industry is run by women, women of color, and owned by men. And
Oh gosh.
that is something that we see often. So, addressing those, you know, gaps, and making sure that we're including everybody, and we have appropriate decision makers, and we need to elevate our voices. We need to elevate everyone's voices and find allies so that people can see that, your ego isn't going to shield you, and you're not just going to like dominate the whole thing, and like people aren't going to have something to say about it. And this goes, and that directly translates to the people that we serve, that we have a diverse, consumer base, everyone, able-bodied, disabled-bodied, vets, people with different economic statuses that are looking to this medicine, as alternatives because they can't afford pharmaceuticals, things like that. We serve everybody, and so that should be representative of who is at the table and how we model things to create equity. So yeah, I don't know. Those little anecdotes of like listening to the men in my immediate circles, like, well, that's doing too much. It's like diligence. And it is our responsibility as leaders in the cannabis industry to set standards and support them.
I mean, I have so many anecdotes, but like the one that comes to mind is we were talking to a potential partner, like on a programming, and we were asking lots of questions, my partner, my business partner, and I. And he turned to our former business partner after the call and said, we asked way too many questions. And it's like, if, you know, for me, I stay curious. I think that's like staying curious is the way that I avoid burnout sometimes. It's just continuing to ask questions, and sometimes listening more than speaking. And I know I'm not doing a good job of that today, but it's really, for me, I think over the past year, I've been spending a lot more time listening to what folks are saying, and it gives me a lot more
Mhm.
just being quiet and letting them just kind of show who they are, kind of thing. And I think the other piece that you made me think about is we need constituents, and that's kind of why I want to stay in the game. Is really we need more constituents on our side, and whether that's bud tenders or the
Mhm.
consumers, or even getting business owners to understand like your political activity is going to be important in this process.
Yeah.
The folks that are cheering on for rescheduling and what Trump is doing is like, wow, you're really not understanding the implications of all of this. When we talk about anti-monopoly, antitrust, we're opening floodgates potentially here that you're not going to be able to deal with as a small business owner,
Right.
nor as an MSO. Honestly, like some of them don't have the money to go up against big tobacco and big pharma. They're going to be absorbed too. So like ultimately, it is a constituency that we need to continue to create and build and educate. And I believe that with the things that are happening in our country, in our governments, in our local governments, that people are really open to understanding how all of these things are connected and to being more involved politically, in ways that benefit us in cannabis too.
Right.
Because like I said, ultimately, I really do think that all these things are connected.
Mhm.
And we can't continue to ignore that. I think we like think, oh, it's cannabis, we're going to operate in this silo,
Yeah.
but that's not the way it works.
And
Yeah.
people don't know what they don't know.
Right.
I say this all of the time. People don't know, especially in our industry, people don't know what they don't know. And that does include the rest of the ecosystem, manufacturers, you know, people who do research and development, and as you said, constituents. People don't people can't know how to care or what to care about if we're not communicating to them what our challenges are and how it ultimately does trickle down and impact them, just from an economic standpoint, taxes, sustainability of businesses, keeping up with those taxes. It's gross, like on a literal number wise situation. It's a gross thing. And also just like the term, it's gross in the sense that it's like it's not cute what we're doing to businesses and people can't survive.
Yeah. Nor
And
what we're doing to the quality of the flower. Like,
yeah, and it's just taking advantage at that point. And so the people that are making those decisions, also, like, if they're not in it, they don't know, they need people that are going to tell them the reality of the situation. And it can be, that totally leads to burnout. That no And keeping all of these moving pieces in mind can be exhausting, and it feels like we have to tackle multiple things at once. um, However, if we band up together and say, like, okay, your specialty is this, your specialty is this, your specialty is this, let's focus on advocating within our things, but with the same, aligning with missions and goals, to ultimately provide a sustainable market for everyone, from manufacturer to consumer. So that's it's. I feel very, very inspired right now in this conversation because we're touching on very real and challenging issues. Yet we do have an opportunity to do to mold it.
Yeah, absolutely. We do. Annette, I loved what you said a minute ago too about bringing up rescheduling, because, that is a great example of a situation that can create in and of itself. So this is just one situation, right? That can create stress, right? And that level of stress can vary based off what your job is, how much it influences your role, what your potential future roles and interest in that may be. So, a lot of the people watching this a lot of us are scientists and researchers and people that work in the medical field. So I'm wondering, and we can kind of move into segueing into how you guys kind of actually covered this, but maybe just a nice little summary of best ways to combat the burnout and stay present and in terms of y'all's experience. But what I was going to say about rescheduling was that, that's a great example of something that can create a lot of stress and uncertainty. And so I was wondering if Annette and Emma too, if you have thoughts, if you guys could speak to, why would that be something that might create difficulty with the industry. And very briefly, because I know it's not really about this, but I'm interested in all of us hearing about rescheduling potentially not being 100% the best thing that could ever happen. Because there's some people, not actually, I don't think anybody in this current who's currently here, but a lot of people in research think that this will only benefit research and that it's a simple thing. And I feel like this might relate to burnout. So yeah, just in the last few minutes, we got about, let's say 15 minutes left.
Yeah, I mean, I think like first of all, I'll refer everyone to the Drug Policy Alliance because I think they really do a great job of summarizing what is exactly happening with rescheduling and what the potential benefits can be to the current operators, but also like what the challenges are definitely going to be. Obviously there are many operators who celebrated potential and by the way, it has not happened. As Trump signed an order, but that does not mean that it has been rescheduled because it's been referred to Pam Bondi. And so we all know how that goes. The other thing is that I think for the biggest standouts are that the operators would get relief with 280E because it would be changed to schedule. I'm forgetting the number. One, two, two, three, three. But first and foremost, for operators, they would not have 280E, so that would provide great tax relief. On the flip side, then it could be something that is regulated by Food and Drug Administration. And so then that becomes something that Big Pharma has access to, and it would not necessarily be in plant form. Like we don't know what the details of all of that could be, particularly in such a chaotic administration. So again, I would refer to Drug Policy Alliance. I always like to give folks like a good point of reference. I think they've done some great work on it. Parabola has a Substack now where there's great material coming out there. So I'd refer you guys to that as well. But it really, I think, could potentially long-term harm small operators and open the floodgates to folks that are really highly monetized, like the Coca-Colas and the big tobacco of the world, to really take over the cannabis industry. And it would be like nationwide, right? Like whole nother ball of wax.
Yeah, I like everything that Annette just said. And I guess on the flip side of things, it might also, create a more open conversation for certain institutions such as the VA, medical institutions, to redefine how it is that they're having conversations and the policies around having conversations with medical patients. So there is that. Hopefully, with regards to banking access and just creating more industry stability, hopefully that's a positive, as well. But there is a lot of fear around, how big pharma is going to essentially potentially monopolize. I think that they're still a little bit fearful of cannabis just because it's a very, bioactive substance with many different compounds, and they don't know how to isolate every single one. And there are certain things that research is showing you can't replicate just by isolating cannabinoids alone or terpenes alone, like different combinations, different expressions on the flower. It's not quite harnessable to them yet. So kind of just based off of this entire conversation, we have to follow it like really carefully so that we don't see the worst of what we know can happen when big pharma and the Coca-Colas and big tobacco. And that's why subject matter experts such as ourselves, influencing decision makers and how those policies are written up is like extremely, extremely important. And I don't know if I have too much more to add to that.
Okay.
Yeah,
No
but
worries.
ask Casey of like how we kind of persevere and push through the burnout. I'll just really quickly say before I forget, just like realign yourself and find that thing that made your brain tick and that made your heart tick from the beginning of why you even got excited to be in cannabis. Like for me, literally working for patients, working with patients every single day, I literally have so many moments of like, this is why I do what I do. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. Even if we do move in different places in the industry, and maybe we started out as bud tenders and we had passion for that, and then we, maybe got caught up in administrative stuff or manufacturing or distribution, or maybe you're not patient facing as much. Like just realign yourself with why you're doing what you're doing and be proud. I think we should all hold a lot of pride in what it is that we're doing, because it's difficult, but it's extremely important. And the train left the station, and we just got to make sure we're on that train. But that means that we have to come back to what made our heart beat with it. So that's what helps. It really helps me. Like when I have a patient come back and they're like, thank you for making this recommendation, or making this recommendation for my parent or for my aunt or for my grandma or whatever. It's eye-opening to them, and it just reaffirms why it is that you're doing what you're doing. So that helps me fight through the burnout.
Perfect. I love it. I've learned a lot from this, you guys. Thank you so much for speaking on this difficult topic. And, we had a lot to say. You guys had a lot to say about rescheduling. And, if we think about it, that's only one thing going on in the industry right now. So then when you become industry advocates to a T, then you start seeing everything going on, and it's easy to get, decision paralysis and all of that. So I think I appreciate you guys a lot for speaking to that. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask? How to stay connected with you guys?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I'm on Instagram, Annette Fernandez NY. I'm on LinkedIn, Annette Fernandez.
Oh,
So those are
perfect.
like or A Fernandez NY at gmail.com. I can put that in the chat. That's my email if you want to email me. I'm not great with me email. My box is crazy. But I think the other thing that just take the break when you need it. Like I took a 3 month. I later literally have been lying down for the last 3 months, and doing what I can in cannabis and showing up where I can. We've got to manage our energy. After like 3 hard years, I was like, okay, I got fired from my last gig because I was way too vocal. And obviously that's traumatic.
Same.
And so like way too, they were like, oh my God, we hired Norma Ray. And so that was really rough to be fired because in my 25-year career, I've never been fired. I've been laid off, but I've never been fired. So that felt rough and wrong, honestly, So just take the break when you need it. And before you totally give up because we need every single person we can. And it's
Mhm.
good for us to tag in and out of this work. It's okay. Don't feel guilty. There's enough of us to hold down the fort if somebody needs to take a break. And also recruit people so that you don't have to do everything by yourself. Recruit others. There's a lot of people that want to get involved and don't know what to do. And there's all kinds of jobs
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
this activism life.
Don't be afraid to like get curious about those different places in the ecosystem, and maybe you can learn a new skill. Like just because you were, going ham on, maybe for me, like for example, the dispensary side of things, I was going in on the dispensary side, and then I got fired because I was being too vocal. And the owner was like, I was being vocal about how much influence the investors were having on our business and how that was impacting the workplace culture and ultimately like our clients and our patients. So when that happens and you feel like you got discouraged in one spot, that's when I did the cannabis culinary program. Like find little programs and like new communities that you can be a part of, so that you can feel reinvigorated and learn something new about the industry. And then suddenly you have a longer resume and more experience, not just in one part, but in different parts of it. That is a great, and that's a break in a way, but it's a great reminder. Annette, thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you for that, both of you. I appreciate it. Things like this are fill our cups up too emotionally, and that's important for combating burnout as well. And I appreciate you guys for also experiencing burnout and taking the time to still speak to us tonight out of your busy schedules. Thank you so much. If we don't have any other questions, I'll go ahead and we'll stop the recording and move on. And I hope you guys
Thank
have a
you.
nice night. Thank you for speaking with us.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Take care.